When my older sister Alina bought the downtown apartment building, my parents acted like she had just been crowned queen of the city. At Sunday dinner, my father lifted his glass and said, to Alina, the first real investor in the family. My mother beamed. She's building something permanent. That's what smart people do. I sat quietly at the end of the table, stirring my iced tea. I had been living in Unit 4B of that building for 3 years. It wasn't glamorous, outdated cabinets, creaky floors, a balcony that tilted slightly to the left, but it was mine. It was where I rebuilt my life after a painful breakup, where I launched my small graphic design business from the second bedroom, where I proved to myself I didn't need anyone's money to survive. When Alina inherited money from Grandma and announced she was buying the building, she pulled me aside afterward. Relax, she said, squeezing my shoulder. Your family. I'll keep your rent at $2, $350. Honestly, your lucky market rate is climbing fast. I believed her. I even thanked her. For 6 months, nothing changed. She renovated the lobby, replaced the exterior lights, and started dressing sharper, silk blouses instead of cotton, designer heels instead of flats. She talked about portfolio expansion and equity leverage at dinner like she'd been born on Wall Street. Then one Tuesday morning, an email notification lit up my phone. Subject, lease adjustment notice. I opened it casually. I reread it 3 times. New monthly rent effective in 30 days. $8, 100. My chest tightened. My vision blurred. There had to be a mistake. I drove to her house immediately. She answered the door in cream-colored silk pajamas, her hair smooth and perfect, as if she'd been expecting me. Tell me this is an error, I said, holding up my phone. She glanced at the screen and leaned against the doorframe. It's market value. She replied calmly, that's more than triple what I pay. She shrugged slightly. The neighborhood's developing. Investors are watching. I can't underprice units. I'm your sister. And this, she said coolly, is business. That Sunday, I brought it up at dinner, expecting outrage. Defense, something. Instead, my father folded his napkin neatly and said, she has responsibilities now. My mother nodded. It wouldn't be fair to other tenants. Across the table, Alina didn't argue. She didn't explain. She just smirked, and in that moment I realized something painful and clear. This wasn't about money. It was about proving she could control the one thing I had built without her. The lease adjustment gave me 30 days. 30 days to either sign a contract agreeing to pay $8, 100 a month, or vacate the apartment I had called home for 3 years. I barely slept that first week. Every night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the familiar hum of the old refrigerator and the pipes knocking in the walls. Sounds that once comforted me now felt like a countdown clock. Alina wasn't just raising my rent. She was trying to corner me. Growing up, she always needed to be ahead. Better grades, better clothes, better praise. If I won something, she'd win something bigger. If I struggled, she'd suddenly shine brighter. Our parents fed it without realizing, or maybe they did realize and just didn't care. When I launched my graphic design business 2 years ago, and it actually started thriving, I noticed something shift in her. She stopped asking about my clients, stopped congratulating my milestones. She'd smile, but it never reached her eyes. Now, standing in my kitchen with that lease notice printed in my hands, I finally understood. She didn't want the extra rent. She wanted the reminder that she had power. For 2 days, I let myself panic. I calculated worst-case scenarios. I looked at overpriced apartments in worse neighborhoods. I even considered moving back in with our parents, which I suspected she would secretly love. Then something inside me hardened. Alina believed I was emotional, impulsive, creative but unrealistic, as she once described me to her friends. She forgot something important. I built my business from scratch, no inheritance, no safety net, just sleepless nights and stubborn determination. So instead of arguing, I made a call. Marcus Rivera, a real estate attorney whose firm I had rebranded last year. We'd worked closely for months. He trusted me, and more importantly, he respected me. We met at a quiet cafe downtown. I slid the lease across the table. She owns the building now. I explained. She disclosed investors recently. He scanned the document carefully, his expression shifting from neutral to curious. Did she register the ownership transfer properly with the city? He asked. I assume so. Never assume. Over the next week, Marcus helped me request public records, permit filings, ownership classifications, tenant notices, and that's when we found it. Alina had raised rents dramatically, but failed to reclassify the building under its updated investment structure, which meant, legally, the increases might violate local housing stabilization laws. I stared at the paperwork, my heartbeat steady for the first time in days. She thought this was business. She was right, and business runs on documentation, not smirks. I didn't warn her. I didn't threaten her. I didn't even argue again. I simply followed the process. Marcus filed the formal complaint with the city's housing authority, attaching every document we'd gathered: ownership records, investor disclosures, rent increase notices, and the missing reclassification forms. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, it was precise. Then we waited. The audit began quietly. Inspectors requested financial records. Tenants in other units were contacted. Questions were raised about renovation permits and compliance filings. 3 weeks later, my phone rang at 9:17 p.m. Alina. I let it ring once before answering. What did you do? She demanded, skipping hello entirely. Her voice was tight, not polished, not calm, fractured. I responded to the lease you sent me. I said evenly, you filed something. She snapped. The city is reviewing everything. Investors are panicking. I leaned back on my couch, staring at the ceiling. I might not have much longer. I didn't do anything illegal. I said, did you? There was silence, sharp breathing on the other end. You're trying to ruin me. The accusation almost made me laugh. Almost. No. I replied softly. You tried to corner me. I just stepped out of the corner. The results came faster than I expected. The building had indeed been improperly classified after ownership restructuring. Because outside investors were now involved, the rent increases triggered stabilization limits. By tripling rates without proper filings and disclosures, she had violated multiple housing codes. The city ordered immediate corrections. All rents were to revert to their previous amounts. Tenants were to be reimbursed for overcharges, and substantial fines were issued for noncompliance. Within days, rumors spread. One investor withdrew funding. Another demanded internal audits. The polished confidence Alina wore like armor began cracking. At Sunday dinner, she didn't show up. My mother kept checking her phone. My father cleared his throat more than usual. Maybe this could have been handled privately. My mother finally said, her voice thin. I looked at her calmly. Was my $8,100 notice private? Silence settled over the table. For years I had been labeled the emotional one, the sensitive one, the creative dreamer, but now, sitting there steady and unshaken, I realized something important. I hadn't acted out of revenge. I had acted out of self-respect. Alina believed power meant control. She forgot that power also means accountability, and for the first time in my life, the golden child wasn't untouchable. She was exposed. 3 months after the audit, I moved out of Unit 4B. Not because I had to, because I chose to. The rent had been restored to $2, $350, and technically I could have stayed, but something inside me had shifted. The apartment no longer felt like independence. It felt like history, and I was ready for something bigger. Marcus introduced me to a developer selling renovated live work lofts in a neighboring district. The area wasn't flashy yet, but it had potential art galleries moving in, tech startups leasing offices, cafes opening on every corner. I trusted potential. I invested most of my savings into a modest unit with tall windows and exposed brick. It was terrifying and thrilling. Within a year, property values in the district doubled. My creative agency expanded from just me and a laptop to a small team of 6. We signed contracts with 2 tech startups and a national nonprofit focused on affordable housing reform. There was something poetic about that. Meanwhile, Alina's situation worsened quietly. 2 investors officially pulled out. Refinancing became difficult. The fines had drained more than just money, they damaged her reputation. One afternoon, my mother called. "Your sister is struggling," she said carefully. "She might have to sell one of her smaller properties." I listened calmly. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel bitterness. I felt distant. A week later, Marcus forwarded me a listing. A small residential building in a recovering neighborhood. Priced fairly, motivated seller, the owner, Alina. I didn't hesitate. Through a holding company Marcus helped me establish months earlier, I submitted a clean, fair offer. No lowball tactics, no games. She accepted within 48 hours. The day the paperwork finalized, I visited the building alone. I walked through each empty hallway slowly, running my fingers along freshly painted walls. Tenants nodded politely as they passed me, unaware of who I was. I wasn't there to gloat. I wasn't there to smirk. I was there to breathe. Alina once raised my rent to prove she could control my stability. Now, without knowing it, she had sold me a piece of her empire, not through manipulation, not through cruelty, through patience. Revenge isn't always loud. It doesn't always slam doors or shout across dinner tables. Sometimes it's quiet growth. Sometimes it's watching the person who tried to shrink you realize they were never as powerful as they believed. Family can betray you, but discipline protects you, and success, earned slowly, ethically, and without apology, tastes far sweeter than any smirk ever could.